Welcome to State of the Arts. I'm Amber Edwards. To quote Faith Ringgold's art dealer, it's like the fish counter at Zabar's on Saturday morning, the way they're lining up to buy her work. Major museums and high-profile collectors like Denzel Washington and Michael Jordan. Oprah Winfrey bought two and gave one to her friend Maya Angelou. You could have one too for the price of a couple of sport utility vehicles. Faith Ringgold, who lives in Englewood, has been a presence in the art world since the 1960s, first attracting attention with her political paintings. By the 70s, she had gained a reputation as an outspoken feminist and civil rights activist. But it wasn't until the 80s that she hit upon her signature style, quilted story paintings, a unique combination of text and textile, image and imagery, much of it about her own life. One quilt, Tar Beach, became an award-winning children's book. Her latest series, The French Collection, is now on view at the New Museum of Contemporary Art in New York. It's a saga in 12 parts, a blend of fact and fantasy starring a young woman named Willia Marie Simone.
Simone was 16 years old. She went to Paris in 1920. Her aunt gave her $500, which was a lot of money in those days, and she became a fabulous artist. She got a chance to do everything she wanted to do because I'm writing the story. That's one of the great things about being an artist. If it's creating images or writing stories, you can just do it. You can make it be whatever you want it to be. You can create the imagery, you can create the story. And it just feels good to be able to have that kind of power, you know, to do that.
Willia's fabulous fictional life includes modeling for Picasso, dining with Gertrude Stein and the lost generation of American writers and artists, lolling on the beach at Saint-Tropez, and dancing at the Louvre.
Willia is a kind of alter ego. She's also a tribute to my mother. Mother loved Europe and she loved Paris. She loved going to see the fashion shows. After we went the first time in 1961, she went a lot of times by herself. And so I thought, wouldn't it be exciting if she could have gone when she was 16 in 1920 and been an artist there, had the freedom to do all the things that she could have done at that time in that place, instead of marrying my father and having us. So I wanted to deal with all the problems, and I wanted her to have solutions to everything. And so she does. Now, of course, some of the solutions you have to pay a price for, selecting them. So she does too. But basically, I solve all her problems. She has lots of money. She gets married, but her husband dies. She has 2 children, but she doesn't have to raise them. But she pays a price for having done that. But she is able to pursue her career as an artist, and without problems in that regard.
It's not just the story of Willia Marie Simone and her adventures. It's also the story of America and France. It's also the story of the Harlem Renaissance and the boom in creative arts in Paris from the teens and the 20s, and how these stories merge and intersect. And in a way, the scope and breadth of what Ringgold is addressing in her work makes it necessary, I think, for her to pin down the particulars of the story in the very precise way that she has, so that you feel that you're living it, not through fictitious characters at all, but through living flesh and blood creatures, you know, people who are part of our lives.
With the story quilts, I decided to not only know what the picture was about, but to write it down so that other people could know as well, so that I could actually communicate the idea that I had. I don't want to make people work. I'd rather do the work. I'm the authority on what it is I'm doing, and I want to communicate that to other people.
Faith has blended a lot of things that are not traditional in her work, and she also will deal with patterns that seem to be, you know, very exotic. She'll do something with the impossible and make it possible, and she likes challenges like that. When Faith was a younger artist, She had, in her young wisdom, the understanding that the work had to get out there. Problem with sending big paintings out is they have stretcher bars, they have to go in crates, and that's very expensive for a young artist that doesn't have a lot of money. So she had this brilliant idea. Why don't we just paint it like a quilt? Because she had a background in quilting from her mama, Willa Posey. So she started to paint in a quilt format, acrylic on canvas, and then quilting the sides. And that is how that construction started, was out of economic necessity.
The first quilt painting that we have in the show, which is Echoes of Harlem from 1980, is a collaboration between mother and daughter. And it was the only collaboration they made. Willie Posey Jones died the next year, so that when Faith then went on to produce other well-known quilts, like Who's Afraid of Aunt Jemima in 1983, she was using a technique that her mother had passed on to her in very much the time-tested way that mothers and grandmothers passed on quilt-making techniques to their daughters. The difference, however, was this was not Kansas or Virginia or a rural setting. This was a mother in Harlem teaching her daughter, who is already a very well-known and appreciated activist, politically engaged artist, to take these traditional techniques and use them in a completely different kind of framework.
She has imagination like a child. It has never stopped. The world is filled with color, and she's a great storyteller. When she was a little girl growing up in Harlem, and it was hot, and the only beach they had was the tar beach on top of the home they lived in. You know, the dream was to escape across the George Washington Bridge to the cool green of New Jersey. And yes, she did. She's living her dream. Why not?